Hello! Welcome back to the Long Distance Love Bombs podcast. I am your host, Dr. Jeremy Goldberg, and today's guest is Alex Dorr. Alex Dorr is the founder and CEO of the functional mushroom company called Mushroom Revival. He's an international educator. He's a researcher about mycology, which is the study of mushrooms. Dude's been all over the world. He's been to China, Ecuador, Jamaica, Vietnam. He is a mushroom dork. This man is obsessed with mushrooms. The functional kind. Not the kind that you find that will take you on a virtual psychedelic trip to the moon on a cow. These are the functional mushrooms. Things like lion's mane and cordyceps, reishi. Maybe you've heard of them, maybe you've not. But it turns out that they are really good for you. And he knows a lot about them. So we dive into all this stuff, as well as him nearly getting shot at in Texas for foraging for mushrooms. Anyway, he's a fun dude. He's an interesting dude. He's kind of what you would imagine a guy obsessed with mushrooms would be. And I mean that in the best, most complimentary way. We have a lot of fun, good vibes all around. And without further ado, listen to Alex Dorr. All right. We are underway. How do you say your last name, actually?
Dorr.
All right. I can nail that one.
Any old Dorr. Yeah.
Alex, any old Dorr. Well, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm stoked to talk to you. And I feel like the story you just told before we started recording might be an interesting jumping off point. So do you mind discussing the Purple Post story?
It's pretty wild. I mean, we were just talking about where we live. You're from Vancouver. I'm from Austin. I just moved here probably about a year ago, and it's growing unbelievably fast, right? With Elon Musk and, all these people moving here. But everyone warned me when I got here because I love mushrooms. Mushrooms are my life. And although it's a bit drier here and there's not as many wild mushrooms, I still love to go out and look for wild mushrooms. But people love their guns here in Texas. Like, people are all about guns and using them as at any chance they get. And so I don't know how true it is, but I've heard two groups of people tell me about this thing in Texas called the Purple Post, where people will paint their posts around their property purple as a warning of, if you come on my property, I'm free to shoot on site. And as a mushroom hunter, I'm terrified, right? Like, there's a lot of cows here in Texas. Some mushrooms happen to grow on cow dung, and there's a lot of people, or you're driving along the road and there's, like chicken in the woods, this amazing gourmet mushroom, bright orange. You'll be driving down the road and see it in someone's yard. And you can tell, like, they don't know what it is, because it'll be a little old, right? And it'd be like, oh, you definitely have seen it. It's right by your front door. You wouldn't mind if I took it. And some people will knock on the front door and say, like, hey, this is a great mushroom. I'm happy to remove it. And I'll share it with you if you want, or do you mind taking it? But the Purple Post, be aware, because the second you step foot, they'll shoot on sight. And state parks for me.
Yeah. Have you seen any Purple Posts firsthand, or not yet?
I have, and I've only seen one, and it was pretty out in the boonies. We were driving to this kind of state park kind of thing, and yeah, they had some skulls of some animals hanging on their fence. Like, you get out in the boonies pretty quick. Austin's a blue dot in a sea of red, as you're just talking about, and you go outside that bubble and it gets wild, wild west real quick.
All right, brother, I realize we have skipped the introduction phase of the podcast. So for those who have never heard of Alex Dorr and don't really know who you are, what you do you mind describing yourself? And like who are you? What's your deal?
I'm a mushroom in a human suit, playing this disguise as long as possible before they figure me out. But no, I love mushrooms. unbelievable. And for most people who don't know what they are, we have a lot of mycophobia here in the US. And so most people, when they hear mushrooms or fungus, they kind of get a little grossed out, right? And that's our culture here in the US or North America. We don't have a rich history. We are a melting pot. So depending on where your ancestors came from, or relatives, you might have a different understanding of mushrooms, right? Or you're in a really metropolitan area and are more hip to the shroom boom going on. But most people just think of like slimy mushrooms in your pizza or magic mushrooms that make you trip out, or like athlete's foot or candida or something. And they're all kind of not the prettiest picture, right? But fungi are unbelievable. They're actually their own kingdom or queendom, and they're totally separate from plants. A lot of people actually think they're a vegetable or a plant. They're not. And there are over 5 million species of fungi out there. So way more than plants. But we've really only scratched the surface of fungi. And, this is my whole life. And I'm a founder and CEO of Mushroom Revival, a functional mushroom company for health and wellness. I also co-host a mushroom podcast, the number one mushroom podcast in the world. Have a lot of fun just geeking out about mushrooms and all that they can do. And it was really attractive to me because it was so mysterious, right? And it almost felt like the underdog that needed the light shined on it, right? And the more I discover it on a daily basis, I'm blown away by fungi. Like minutes before I got on this call, I read an article about they think they found mushrooms on Mars growing, and they haven't confirmed it, but that was just the preliminary article of, in the tracks of the rover, they see these globule structures growing and disappearing almost exactly like the mushroom, and they look like a puffball. And so even, minutes before this call, I'm like, whoa, this is awesome, and constantly blown away. And so that's kind of a quick and dirty reason why I'm so obsessed, but the list is infinite.
Yeah. As a science dork, I feel like I have to ask a follow-up. And if you don't know, that's cool. But
Please.
So mushrooms are not plants. What
Right.
distinguishes a mushroom in such a drastic way that it's not considered to be a plant?
Yeah, there's various ways that we make these distinctions, and they're always changing, right? So there's these things called slime molds for the longest, and fungi used to be considered plants, right? It wasn't that long ago that they were kind of kicked out and made their own thing. And we're constantly making these boxes around biological life and constantly changing them, right? As we study more. And so these slime molds were considered fungi, and they're like, oh, well, they're a little bit different. And so we kicked them out. And so we're constantly shifting these definitions of what they are. And even species of mushrooms, there's always a joke of how many mycologists does it take to change a light bulb? And it's 100, one to actually change the light bulb, and 99 to argue of what Latin name it is. And so as you're studying mushrooms, you're constantly like, oh, but it used to be called this. It used to be in that family or that genera, and now it's changed. And it really stands to show how much we don't know and how much we're constantly figuring out about the fungal kingdom. Of those 5 million species that I was talking about, estimated out there, we only know 120,000 of those. So just a fraction. And out of those 120,000 species, only 14,000 of those actually produce mushrooms, like those cap and stem forms that most people think of when they think of mushrooms. So fungi as a kingdom or queendom include things like yeasts and molds, right? And only a small portion of those actually produce mushrooms, which is really like a fruiting body. You can think of it like an apple on an apple tree. And the main part of the organism is the tree, right? The roots, and that would be called like mycelium. So mushrooms that people know are just the fruit, right? their whole responsibility as, part of the organism is to spread the seeds or the spores in this case. And some of them happen to be delicious. Some happen to be functional for our health.
Mm.
And, some of them that don't produce mushrooms, we consume on a daily basis. And, if you eat bread in the morning or have a beer at the end of the day, you're consuming fungi, right? In form of a yeast. And that's a fungi. And I've encountered people drinking a beer and eating bread telling me that they hate mushrooms. And it's like, oh, well, even every breath you take, you're breathing in hundreds, if not thousands of mushroom spores. And every step that you take on the ground, you're walking over miles of this mycelium or the roots of these mushrooms. So they're more abundant than most people recognize. And even a wide majority of our own myco and microbiome consists of fungi, right? We have hundreds of different species that make up our bodies, and people don't realize. And as we dive in, we're just realizing that we're just like the public transit bus for microorganisms, and we're just the vessel carrying around these millions of different microbes, and we're just a vessel. That's all we are. And every time we eat, what percentage are we actually consuming, or are we just feeding these microorganisms? And our mood swings and our personality, how much is that? How much of that is shaped by the microorganisms? We're on a daily basis figuring that out, right? Like 70% of our immune systems in our gut, or 90% of our serotonin and dopamine are, in our gut. And, it's just fascinating. Every rock that we pick up, we're realizing that most of this world was actually a puppet for fungi to play.
I love that. So in some ways, the mushroom is like the genitals of the mycelium, in that it's a
Yeah,
reproductive
yeah, you can,
component.
for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I
I've
think
heard of
I
some
watched this.
people call it the temple for copulation.
Okay. The
Yeah,
temple. Yeah, because I watched this documentary on Netflix a while ago about mushrooms, and it was like the vast underground network and it blew my brains apart. And I saw on your website you have this phrase called the Internet of the Forest. Do you mind
yeah,
touching on that briefly?
yeah. So when I was talking about like kind of the puppet uh, analogy, it's so true, right? So all the plants that we look around, we see, if we walk in the woods, trees are just kind of a glove for fungi. And really, what's going on in the innards of a tree or any plant has a lot to do with fungi. Any plant, really, its own survival has to do with these fungi in their cell walls or attached to their roots. Um, by using mycorrhizal fungi that connect to the roots, or endophytic fungi in the cell walls. And, plant life evolved from fungi interacting with photosynthetic organisms. And that's how really plant life got established on this planet. We wouldn't have soil if it wasn't for fungi drilling into this rocky substrate and excreting enzymes and acids to break down this mineral rock faced barren landscape, and forming these lichenized structures to create the plant life we know today. And this internet of the forest that you just talked about is one of the main reasons why, we plant trees as a company. We plant, minimum 10,000 a year all around the world, is because they are ecosystems for this fungi to play. And the more we dive in, we're revealing that there is this internet of the forest beneath our feet, constantly sending messages and nutrients, and connecting all plants and trees in our ecosystems. And so one tree in a forest that is getting a lot of nutrients, a lot of sunlight, can actually send nutrients to one tree that's maybe in the shade, maybe not doing so hot, and actually share some of that wealth of nutrients. So it's a ecosystem of health, and even messages of, hey, there's a pathogen coming. Turn on these defense mechanisms before it reaches you, right? So we get this communication and also this network of nutrient sharing. And this mycorrhizal fungi is crucial for like desert plants as well. It creates these globules which can actually hold water like a camel. So in drought season, it can actually just feed tiny bits of water to the plant, almost like a camelback, right? And help it survive, and also nutrients as well. It's responsible for trading nutrients and helping it mine nutrients that the plant can't get, and also increasing the surface area to absorb that water and nutrients, and protecting it against different pathogens. So they're incredibly important for our ecosystem health. They're responsible for up to 60% of carbon sequestration in the soil, and even a lot of the functional compounds that we know from plants are actually derived from fungi. And the more that we're diving in, like Paxil is an example where we thought it was from a yew tree, and then we found it was actually a fungi inside, or spearmint, where the taste and smell of spearmint, right? That actually comes from a fungi within its cell walls of the plant, and not actually the plant itself. And a ton of different plants, that have really extremophile properties that are able to live in really acidic places like Yellowstone National Park and those acid pools. Fungi inside of them are making them resilient enough to live in these really extreme environments. So I like to think of it like they're the janitors, they're the stewards of the forest that really don't get a lot of credit, but they're doing all the work. They're making everything all work together in this beautiful symphony. And I'm really excited to be on the show and even have this conversation, have people listening, because they do deserve that credit, and they do deserve more education around them and more curiosity.
Yeah. I kind of see you as like the Lorax for the mushrooms. You know how like the Lorax
I love that. Yeah.
used to speak for the trees? You're like, no, man. So for those listening, Alex has really long, like down to his chest, bright, like red hair. So you have like you're almost like a caricature in a way, right? I was going to ask, I mean that as a compliment, just so we're clear.
No, I take it.
Okay. I was going to ask, have you read the book, The Over Story?
No, I haven't.
Richard Powers. It's dense and it's thick and it's beautiful, but the underlying subtext or the subplot involves the preservation of forests and nature, and he talks a lot about the science behind it. One of the characters in the book is an arborist who studies trees, and one of the parts of that book that I thought was really interesting, at some point he makes the suggestion that the organism might actually be the forest rather than the individual tree. And right. So the actual organism, the living, breathing thing, is the entire ecosystem as a whole. And he talked about what you just mentioned there, the internet of the forest underneath, how some trees will give nutrients to other species who are in competition with them because it's actually about the collective good rather than the individual survival.
Yeah, and there's actually a great example, two great examples of that. So the largest organism on the planet by mass is the pando trees, which is, these aspen trees, which are actually just one organism that are connected underground by this root system. And then the largest organism by, area is the honey fungus, which is just one organism that spans, hundreds of acres. And it's one organism that actually eats trees, right? It decomposes trees. And one view is it's a pathogen, but it's also creating, these prairies and spots in the forest where other animals can thrive, right? And also just creating that carbon cycle. And yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's a matter of perspective. As I was talking about our human bodies, it's like, are we a human or are we a collection of millions, if not billions of different microbes working in symphony, right?
Mm.
Is it a tree, right? Is that one plant? Is that one Latin name? Or is it a symphony of all these different organisms working together? And as we're picking up those rocks, we're learning it's the latter, right? And so you're talking about like, okay, how do we establish that a fungi is different from a plant? Well, this is where it gets gray. This is the gray area of, you know, sometimes biological life goes beyond all the boxes that we try to put on it. And fungi is a great example of that, where it's this great escape artist of any rule that we make, it breaks in a matter of seconds, right? And the more we can't even comprehend the complexity of life with our language. And that's not, you know, that really shows that we have a lot to evolve, right? That we think we're separate from the ecosystem, that, you know, but it really shows that we have a lot to grow and understand about the world around us.
Mm. So, Alex, how did you get into all of this? Like, why is fungi your thing? Like, where did it begin?
I didn't choose it, honestly. There wasn't a choice really. It came to the point where I was backed into a corner, and you know, mushrooms put a contract in front of me and was like, "Hey, you want to sign the rest of your life away?" And with a gun under it, and I didn't have a choice really. At various moments in my life, I've always dealt with some various health problems throughout my life, and whether it be chronic anxiety, depression, and then Lyme disease, things like that. And, you know, through dealing with that for many years of my life, I was committed to leading a healthier way of life, right? And through that journey, I found mushrooms just kept popping up again and again and again in my research to support, you know, my overall health and wellness. And, you know, through that, I realized they can do way more. They can clean up oil spills. They can create new styrofoam replacements, new foam meat. And a lot of the problems that were wrenching me, you know, I studied philosophy and spent a lot of time thinking about, you know, a lot of the world's problems and how do I fit in as a human being to help make a positive impact and, you know, finding purpose in my life, right? And fungi just kept popping up again and again as this like holy grail. Like, I have the answer. Maybe not all of them, but hey, here's a potential solution that no one is talking about, or a very select few, and no one's really doing it at a large scale or talking about it enough. And I was like, hey, you know, again, like the Lorax figure is like, hey, someone's got to step up and do it, talk about it, and really bring these into the wider awareness and get as many people talking about it as possible, right? Because they are really cool. And I really got into it in the beginning through the lens of mycoremediation, and that's just using fungi to clean up or filter toxic waste in the environment. And it really, I took a trip to Ecuador, 2 trips, actually. The first trip when I was really young, and some of the best days of my life was a family trip. And I remember this one day in particular that we were deep in the Amazon rainforest and just blown away as a kid, obsessed with all this life, seeing monkeys and tarantulas and all this. And I was like, whoa, like it was every little kid's dream to see, or at least mine, right? To see this abundant life in a rainforest. It was the coolest thing in the world. And I would always like want to go to the rainforest cafe to try to mimic that, you know, in any way. And it would get like a stuffed animal monkey that I would carry around and things like that. But it was amazing, but on the other hand, it was almost traumatizing to see and hear like saws in the background and dams being built, and this really severe anthropogenic devastation happening to the ecosystems and the people that live there. It's like, how could you fuck up the most beautiful place in the world, And it wasn't until years later I went back and spent a few months there studying the different biodiversity and different ecosystems and the human effects on them as a field study. And so there's a point where I was staying with this tribe, the Warani people, and it was in the most biodiverse place in the world. It was rated #1 in this region of Ecuador. And it was also a site for an oil drilling site. And so this company came in with guns and they, totally devastated this specific region and the people living there, and just I saw unlined pits of oil and just crazy stuff, devastating effects to this pristine, beautiful area. And I was like, okay, I got to do something to help. And so that was my portal to get into mycoremediation of, okay, if fungi can clean up oil spills, I got to do more research into it, and did some studies on them degrading like cigarette butts and various other toxins, and actually ended up writing a book for my final thesis. It's like a 230-page book on mycoremediation and how people can have access to it. Ended up being not that big of a hit. It's a very niche topic, I realized later. So now I'm writing another one just on general mushrooms so that the average person can get excited about it as much as I was. But it was exciting and is exciting nonetheless that we have these solutions right in front of us, and we can use biomimicry to look at the landscape of what are the checks and balances that nature already provides, and the solutions that are just right in front of us, right? That we can just mimic and form this symbiotic relationship with the world around us like any other organism, right? I think we're the only organism that does not form adequate symbiotic relationships. We don't. And even with ourselves, we're terrible at getting along. And we're not alone. I'm not saying that it's all sunshine rainbows in nature. I mean, wolves fight and bears, claw each other. This is part of nature, and animals eat each other. I get it, but we're causing so much destruction at such a rapid pace that, as soon as we can form a deeper relationship, the better. And I think mushrooms are not the only portal to get there, but for me, they just working with like psilocybin mushrooms and, going through that journey on a spiritual level, but also just getting out in the woods, and forest bathing, seeing nature, right? Or just studying an organism in the world and not, looking at your screen, watching TikTok or something, it will benefit everyone and everything in the world if we dive deeper into nature.
Yeah, I love how your journey it seems like it was a series of random passion projects that led you to your purpose ultimately. It's like, yeah, I want to go to Ecuador. That sounds cool. Like, oh, I want to study this thing. That sounds cool. I want to do this very niche topic in a very unique environment and write a book. That sounds cool. And now you're the CEO of a company who sells mushrooms. It's like you wouldn't have predicted that, I don't imagine.
No. And I would hope that, a lot of the things I'm doing now on a day-to-day basis, are not my passion projects. I'm dealing with regulation by the FDA and, hiring and firing employees and a lot of things that have nothing to do with mushrooms. So this is just where I'm at, but it's a beautiful extension of, again, how everything's interconnected. I went into this business thinking I would geek out about mushrooms 24/7. And it's really just a small fraction of my time that when I get on podcasts or whatever I can talk about. But, everything's connected. And through dealing with, say the FDA, it's okay. That's another other people in the world that I have to convince why mushrooms are cool, and maybe we can change some regulation, right? So that's something that we're talking about. Okay, how do we get these certain compounds or certain mushrooms to be more established and accepted and approved by the FDA, right? And so that's a conversation, and that's an important leap. And yeah, it's exciting nonetheless. I'd rather be walking around the woods and looking for mushrooms 24/7 and happen to have all my bills paid. But starting Mushroom Revival was my ikigai. It's a concept of four pieces coming together of something you're good at, something that pays the bills, something that the world needs, and something that you love, right? And for me, it was, mushrooms. It kept coming up again and again, and it makes me really happy that I can give these functional mushroom to people to support their health and wellness, make them feel good, while also planting trees and improving the ecosystems around. And it's something, I'm learning to be better at every day, and it pays the bills so far. So yeah, I wouldn't choose anything else.
Yeah. You mentioned a moment ago the spiritual aspect of psilocybin mushrooms. Is that something that you're open to discussing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So most people, when I say I have a mushroom company, they automatically assume it's magic mushrooms, right?
And maybe just to clarify for people listening, what magic mushrooms are, and like.
Yeah. So what I'm talking about is functional mushrooms. That's what Mushroom Revival focuses on. That's just for health and wellness. Totally legal. They're like shiitake, reishi, cordyceps, just for, supporting energy, cognitive function, and immune support, things like that. Psilocybin or magic mushrooms are here in the United States illegal. Some cities are decriminalizing, and most places around the world it is illegal. However, there are places where it is legal, like Jamaica and places like that. But these mushrooms, contain the compound psilocybin and psilocin and some other compounds that are, quote, magical, right? And so they're psychoactive, they're psychotropic, and they're entheogens. So they help, as some people put it, see the God within and connect you with the universe and really have an ego shattering experience where you are the universe. And even on the smaller level, they, a lot of people are big into microdosing. So taking a like 0.2, 0.4 grams, and people even take it during work. Like it's famous in Silicon Valley, where you'll just have a small, slight effect from it, but you can still drive, you can still do your normal life. But your perception on life is just a little bit altered, just a tiny, tiny bit. So normal tasks and events in your life that you normally just shrug off or think is unremarkable tends to have a tiny bit of sparkle, right? And you get a little more grateful for it and becomes remarkable. And you're more grateful for your life. You can act more creatively. There's a lot of studies coming out with human clinical trials where it's incredibly transformational for drug addiction and PTSD, end of life care. So psilocybin is starting to be recognized, and it's not new, right? Cultures have been using magic mushrooms or psilocybin for tens of thousands of years, if not more. There's actually a theory by Terence McKenna that our modern day humans evolved from our use of using psilocybin mushrooms. It's called the stoned ape theory. And the theory is that when we were hunters and gatherers and, early Neanderthals, thank you. We hadn't even developed language yet. And here I am stumbling on my words. I need more psilocybin in my life, I guess. But uh, we were following animals, right? And we're probably really hungry, and we're following dung, to track these animals. What grows out of dung? Some magic mushrooms, psilocybin containing mushrooms. And, you know, um, we probably saw other animals or insects eating them. We saw their effects, knew it was safe. And so we consumed it and had this totally crazy life altering experience. And through millions of years of neurogenesis, we develop, a larger prefrontal cortex and increase evolution of our synapses and our brain to develop things like language and religion and more kind of complex concepts like agriculture and philosophy and things like that. And it's not too far off. The book that he talks about this is called Food of the Gods, and he lays it out in a pretty educated way. And I'm a believer in it. I don't think it's the sole reason. I think there's many things that came along to influence our evolution, including a more calorie rich diet, excess of food, and things like that. But psilocybin was utilized for thousands of years all around the world, right, by all different cultures, and was really introduced in the U.S. By a man called Gordon Wasson. He was really the main reason it became really popular. He authored a Life magazine article about it, but then shortly after he released that, there was the war on drugs, and it became illegal pretty quickly. But between 1957 and like 1968, when it was banned in the US, we got some preliminary studies, and during that 10 plus year period, people like Albert Hoffman and Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert and the psychedelic gang of the 60s, with Harvard, their psilocybin project and things like that, were able to establish that, one, this is safe, and two, that it can be very useful. But for the last 40 years, it's been very criminalized. It's been having a terrible name, right? People think of magic mushrooms, they think bad thoughts, and that was a lot due to the propaganda behind it. But now we're having a renaissance in the present day. Canada, I think, is leading the way in the research, and a lot of companies getting access to do a lot of these trials and to grow it. And we're starting to see another green rush happening in the psilocybin space. And even in the US, we're seeing cities pop up left and right, decriminalizing its use, even Oregon legalizing its therapeutic use. And they haven't solidified all the rules yet, but it's starting to see a comeback and a lot of people taking it seriously, which is great. So I think there's incredible potential there, and it's not a cure-all, right? But it will help, And I think I'm a better person from using psilocybin. I think I'm way, a lot of people consider it like 10 years of therapy in one night, and I would agree. I think it's it helps speed up the process of a lot of things and humble us down, helps us connect. Just, I've heard parents using it and just saying they're a better parent, better dad, more compassionate. They can play a lot easier. They're less angry. Little things that used to upset them just doesn't anymore. They're a lot grateful for just, the smallest things. So it's really special.
Yeah, I guess this is the part of the podcast where I have to say to the listener, don't run out and ingest large amounts of psilocybin mushrooms. Do your own research. This stuff is big magic. It is potent and life altering. And if you have any history of mental illness or the like, it can potentially pose significant problems. In saying that, don't sue me or Alex, but also the research that has been coming out lately. I read an article the other day about Johns Hopkins in particular, suggesting that the clinical trials that they're doing are significant and powerful, and that the results are showing psilocybin is a very useful possibility for treating complex PTSD and other mental illnesses. So I think there's huge potential, and it's going to be an interesting space for sure in the years to come. So yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for saying that. I also do not condone anyone to break any laws.
Right.
There are some places it is legal. So depending on where you're listening in the world, check your laws of where you are, and definitely I do not condone any illegal activity, and definitely do your research. And if you
the other side of
doctor's
that,
approval or something, definitely get that.
Is there are studies that you can potentially volunteer for to be a participant if you.
Oh yeah, I almost did. I almost was part of a Johns Hopkins study for. It's really a funny story. It was for cigarette addiction. So we actually interviewed. We just had this guy on our podcast, who is part of Johns Hopkins, and he led this study. And it was back in the day where I was actually overcoming my own addiction of smoking a ton. I used to smoke like 2 packs a day. And through working with psilocybin, I don't smoke anything now. And so right at the tail end, when I was like, barely smoked anymore, but I still did, but just not at the amount. I saw it, and I reached out to them. I was like, hey, I would love to join your study. I, have been using it for a while and noticed these great effects. And they're like, okay, 2 reasons why we want people that has never done it before. And 2, we need you to, at that time I was like, I smoke like 1 cigarette a day or something. And they're like, yeah, we need you to smoke a little bit more to at least join the study. And I was like, well, how many do you need me to smoke? And I remember they were like, well, at least like 1 or 2 packs. And I was like, I could do that. Yeah. And like, of course they denied me, but I remember I was like, I can tell you I've never done magic mushrooms before. If you want me, I'll start smoking 2 packs a day if I can be part of this study. I was so into it. And I was, when we brought him back on the show, I was like, do you remember me reaching out? And he's like, I think I remember them talking about it in the office, but it was many, many years ago. But yeah, and they're continuing to do many studies that you can volunteer for a ton of different things, and they're pretty rigorous on what they want from people. So just check in with them. And there's a ton of groups. John Hopkins is probably the most famous, but there's the Imperial College of London. There's MAPS is a great resource. There's a ton of different groups now.
And I guess if you're listening, it's not like you just go in and you get some mushrooms and then you go away and you eat the thing and your life has changed. There's significant therapeutic sessions with a trained professional beforehand. There's therapy afterwards to integrate the experience. It's like an entire rigorous routine.
Yeah. And this is the reason why I don't, as much as I would love to see it legalized, I don't think it would ever happen. And I think at least there would be some rules and regulations. And that was the approach that Oregon took, where California wanted to fully legalize it and it didn't pass, right? They didn't get enough signatures, where Oregon wanted to do it in a way that was highly regulated in these medical centers, where you would have to, go in, be approved by a doctor, and then these sessions would be in a hospital-like setting where, they haven't set up all the rules yet, but I'm guessing it would be very, very regulated, and you would have to stay there for the entire time. They might even have like bedding there and lodging. I don't know how they plan to do it. It might get operationally sticky, but But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it'll ever be loosey goosey. I think it will always be very highly regulated here, at least in the United States. I can't say the same for like Canada. I know Jamaica, there's tons of retreat centers that you can go to. It's fully legal. And yeah, you go for a week and get lodging, and they have these
Mm.
ceremonies and with, you know, practitioners there if anything happens. And yeah.
It's an interesting thing to explore, for sure. I'm conscious of time and that we haven't actually spent much of it on functional mushrooms, which is
Let's
kind
do
of
it.
the meat of your work and your biz. So, what are functional mushrooms? What do we need to know? Why are they important? Go. This is your soapbox moment, Alex.
For sure. And as I brought up before, they're not the slimy mushrooms on pizza. They're not these magic mushrooms. So the functional mushrooms that we focus on, they're totally legal. You're not going to have any problems with the DEA or anything like that. And so
You're not going to
there's
hallucinate.
you're not going to hallucinate. They're like, you know, functional herbs, like you would have chamomile tea at the end of the day. And what makes functional mushrooms so popular are two main aspects. So they're adaptogens, which is a word that's been thrown around a lot recently, and it's gotten a lot of press, and for a great reason. Adaptogens are herbs or mushrooms that help support our body's natural ability to deal with occasional stress and fatigue. And you know, everyone deals with occasional stress, right? I mean, you're stuck in traffic, whatever happens, it comes up, right? And it's a normal biological process. But as much as we can support our body's natural ability to deal with it, the better we'll feel, right? And the more we can stay flexible and easeful and just feel better, right? And another important aspect which plays into the adaptogenic role, and why mushrooms are so popular, are their ability to support your immune system. And that's definitely a popular topic now, but it's incredibly important all the time, right? In seasonal change, or just throughout your life, you want to be feeling, you know, the best you could possibly feel, and in tip top shape. And so 10 mushrooms that I think are the most popular here in the US and, you know, North America. The first would be cordyceps, and that's our bread and butter. We love cordyceps. We actually built the largest and only certified organic cordyceps militaris mushroom farm in the Americas. And they're in the wild, actually growing bugs. So they're super wild. And out of a sci-fi film, we didn't grow them on bugs. We don't have this secret sci-fi layer where we're cultivating bugs and growing them out of their heads. We could, but we're not. And we developed this, you know, vegan formula. It's, you know, it's like rice based and things like that. And the mushrooms just pop out of there. And they look like Cheetos. They're like orange little mushrooms, and they're most known for supporting energy. And the two main compounds, cordycepin and adenosine, our bodies actually can't tell the difference really. And adenosine is one of the precursors to adenosine triphosphate, which is ATP. And if you remember high school biology class, it's, you know, food for the mitochondria. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Every time I say that, people are like, "Oh my god, I have a rhyme that I learned in high school about that." But yeah, it's natural energy support on the cellular level, and it's different from a coffee. Coffee actually does almost the opposite. It actually suffocates the brain, and it blocks the adenosine receptors, so you get launched in kind of a fight or flight mode, and your body's like, "I'm not getting enough oxygen. Holy shit." Um, let's get some energy, and then that's why you crash, right? That's why you have the afternoon crash, because you're starving your brain of oxygen, right? So long term, that's why people say like you should cut off on coffee and like not rely on it. And that's why it's so addictive, because you want more, right? It feels so good in that short term, but long term it can be detrimental to your health. And so these herbal alternatives to support energy are way healthier for the body. And coffee is a plant, right? I mean, it's a naturally occurring plant. Not all plants are great. Even though it's natural, doesn't mean it's great. And I drink coffee. I'm not bashing coffee like it's evil. I love coffee. I love the taste of it. But if we can maybe drink less and help supplement with these other things. The other main, famous mushroom would be reishi, and it's coined the 10,000 year mushroom or mushroom of immortality. Beautiful mushroom, can grow in like bonsai looking shapes and grows on logs, and beautiful, beautiful mushroom that has been utilized for thousands of years. It's written in traditional Chinese herbalism as the number one herb. If you can have any herb for anything for overall health, pick reishi. So it's definitely revered in China and in traditional herbal scripture. And a lot of people know it for its supportive effects on our natural transition to a good night's rest, right? And its calm supporting effects. And it has incredible effects for supporting the immune system. It has a lot of triterpenes in it, which are incredibly supportive for overall health. Lion's mane is known as the brain mushroom. It's becoming super popular right now as a nootropic and kind of a study aid, and one that you just keep on your desk while you're working, things like that. It has a class of compounds called hericenones and erinacines and some other like compounds that help support our cognitive function. So power mushroom, it's amazing. Chaga is another fungi. It's not technically a mushroom. I won't get into the specifics, but it's like a conch. It's a canker. It grows on birch trees, and it's super delicious. A lot of people like to mix it in their coffee, and it's this really rich, almost chocolatey, vanilla, earthy flavor, and it pairs really nicely with like hot cocoa or coffee or something, and really supportive to the immune system. We got shiitake, maitake, which you can find in the grocery store. Really known for their 1316 beta glucans, lentinin in shiitake, and MD fraction in maitake, which support the immune system. Same with turkey tail, known for its PSP and PSK compounds for supporting the immune system. Those are like the main 7 that are super popular. Then there's 3 that we're trying to make popular here in the US and North America. Again, like Wolfiporia cocos or Wolfiporia extensa grows naturally in the US and was really popular by some indigenous groups here in North America. Then the information about it kind of died out, unfortunately. And it became really popular in a lot of Asian countries throughout the years. And now it's starting to have kind of a revival here in North America again. But it is natural. It is naturally growing here and is native species. And that is incredibly supportive for overall mood and immune support. And just a great, again, it's not a mushroom. It's like a yam looking, it's technically a sclerotia. I won't get into the nitty gritties, but it's a fungus, right? The taxonomists would get mad if I actually called it a mushroom. But tremella, really popular in skincare for supporting hydration and skin health and overall immune support. And then the last is Mishima. So this is Phellinus linteus. It's called Women's Island, is the rough translation from Japanese, and overall supporting women's health and immune support and things like that. So immune support is basically the overall trend with all the functional mushrooms, and also the adaptogenic qualities of supporting our body's natural ability to deal with occasional stress. And I won't get into it too much, but I think it's super important to just super briefly touch upon when people are looking for mushrooms in the space. There's a lot of crap out there. And this is the same when you're looking at CBD. This is the same if you're looking for anything, right? You definitely want quality. And with all products, there is crap on the market. There's shams, there's scams, there's, things that the average consumer, unless they're educated about, can be um, maybe taken advantage of. So the first is to get actual mushrooms. And so this is only a problem that I'm seeing really in North America, or especially the United States. A lot of companies will utilize something called mycelium on grain. So mycelium, as we were talking about in the beginning, is the roots of the mushrooms, and the grain is just the growing media. So it'd be like if you go to a dispensary, if take part in cannabis or something, and you buy some nugs, and they give you a bag of dirt with some roots in it, and you're like, well, what the hell is this? And they're like, oh, this is weed. It's not, right? And it's the same concept. Or if you buy an apple pie and they just hand you an aluminum tray with like dirt and apple tree twigs in it, you're like, what? And leaves and stuff. It's not apple. They're not apples in there, but they'll label it like made with real apples. And so a lot of companies will label their products like made with mushrooms. There's mushrooms in here, and there are no mushrooms in the product. And it's really this mycelium on grain. And that's a problem in and of itself of just false labeling. Some companies will say, hey, this is just mycelium. And they'll have really fancy marketing copy that makes it seem like it's incredible, but all the scientific studies out there show that there's just dramatically less functional compounds in the mycelium on grain. And so if you're really going to pay a lot of money for a supplement, make sure it's the actual mushroom. And it's quite dramatic, the differences. I mean, we did some preliminary studies with cordyceps, and the main compounds in there were up to 400 times more in the actual mushrooms compared to the mycelium. So it's a huge difference. Not to say mycelium is bad; it's amazing. Just a lot of the current practices are not the best if you're looking to spend a lot of money on it. So it's not like it's not supportive; it's just not as supportive, right? And then on the same level, make sure it's extracted, so it'll be double extracted. Some companies won't even extract their mushrooms. I can go in depth on why that's important, but I'll just leave it at that. It's just more available compounds for your body to absorb, right? And then having all the good certifications, so making sure it's USDA certified organic, it's non-GMO if you can get that, and if it has the organic seal, it is non-GMO. It's tested for heavy metals and biological contaminants, and we might be the only company, and there could be a company that I'm unaware of that actually has a QR code with our lab results that we just share transparently. We're the only functional mushroom company that I know of, and I could be wrong. There could be one that I don't know of yet, but and I think that's really important for any industry, but especially anything that you're putting into your body, of like, what the hell is in it? And are there heavy metals in there? Are there E. coli? What are the levels? I mean, and then also, what are the functional mushroom compounds? Like what is making it functional, right? And what amounts are in there? So we're fully transparent about that, and I think we're hoping it becomes an industry standard. It's something that we're mavericks about is quality, right? And being transparent. So yeah, that's a few things I think they're important to say for creating really intelligent consumers.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because in some of the research I did about you before I was deciding whether or not to talk to you, I kind of did some research and was like, oh, they're organic. It seems like your company, and probably you as proxy, has a very high integrity around the work that you do and the quality of the product that you're putting out in the world. So I appreciate that as a person. Like
we're not perfect, we can absolutely improve, and we are every single batch. And we don't even have to, right? I mean, the products that we have are significantly more potent than, and we lab test, we pull stuff off the shelf and compare it to ours, and it's up to 400 times more potent, and we're still like, how do we make it more? And it's more expensive for us. It's way more expensive for us to use mushrooms. Like, we would love to use mycelium on grain. It's a fraction of the time to grow it. It's a fraction of the price. If I'm putting on my business cap, I'm like, oh yeah, I would love to use that and have incredible margins and make as much money as possible. But that's not why I'm in this. I want to make really good products that supports people's health, and I want people to feel good, right? If they're paying as much money as they are, I want them to feel it, and I want them to have an amazing experience and keep coming back. And that makes me happy. We can continue to plant trees and have healthier people in the world, connecting to nature. Yeah, I can fall asleep at night feeling good. So
yeah, that's like the ultimate win-win-win, right?
Yeah.
And like, I guess the final point was that you touched on scientific research. And so I'm presuming that a lot of these mushrooms have been studied in laboratories and they have verifiable, replicable results and whatnot.
Yeah, there's a ton of human trials that people can look up. If you want to just search on ResearchGate or Google Scholar, yeah, you can find all these scientific articles that you want. And we're even looking to do trials on our own products because, obviously the more information, the better, the more transparency, the better. But functional mushrooms have been used for over 20,000 years all around the world. It's not a new thing. It might be new for some people hearing about it, but this is an ancient relationship that we're just reviving, and that's part of our name, mushroom. Hey, the juicy one.
Sorry, brother, the internet decided to not be excellent for that last bit. Maybe you could just say again that last sentence or two, and we could just crop it in.
Yeah. We decided to, we decided to.
It did it again. So I don't know what's going on. Yeah. So the internet gods are not with us at the moment. So
I can repeat it if you want.
No, man, maybe this is just a sign that like, it's a good time to finish, but perhaps
sure.
I'll include links in the show notes for all of the stuff, including your products. And I presume you've got a website, and I know you've got a website, but I presume you've got an Instagram account as well, like a tag, and help spread the word.
Yeah, it's all Mushroom Revival. And I do have a coupon code for your audience if you're open to it.
Yeah.
So
what's the code?
It's just Love Bomb. So all capital letters, Love Bomb. It's not plural. So it's just singular Love Bomb for 15% off or sorry, 10% off your first order. So
cool. Thanks for that. I didn't know that was happening, but I appreciate it. I might take you up on that as well, man. Get some mushrooms in my veins. But
I'll send me your address. I'll send you a goodie box for sure.
For real? Oh, all right.
Oh yeah,
I'm down.
Definitely.
All right.
Just spread the word.
Deal. Alex Dorr, thank you so much, brother. I really enjoyed the chat. I love what you're doing. I love what you're about, and long may the mushroom Lorax shout. And it'd be fun to connect in real life one day, man, and go for a forage or an adventure.
Let's do it. I'm dying to get back to Vancouver. And if you're ever in Austin, hit me up. And for all the listeners out there, if you have any mushroom questions at all, reach out. We have an entire team of super passionate, educated people that are here for you, right? Nothing makes us happier than people getting turned on by mushrooms. And I can't remember the psychology phenomenon where, you see a red car and then you see red cars everywhere. But when people start getting into mushrooms, they send us messages like, I meet new people for the first time and I introduce them to mushrooms and I get a text like 3 days later, like, I take the same trail every day. I go hiking and I've never seen one mushroom for like 10 years. And now I saw 8,000 mushrooms, all different colors. So hopefully if you listen to this whole thing, just keep your eye out. You'll see mushrooms left and right. And, welcome to my world.
Yeah, brother, it's a good place to be, man. I'm glad you're creating it for the rest of us. So thank you again.
And the mushrooms, it's all they're doing, right? I'm a puppet myself. I'm just the Lorax, but it's all the mushrooms and the fungi speaking through me, and it's all them. They're doing the heavy lifting. I got an easy job.
So there you go, Alex Dorr, Mushroom Dork. And as mentioned, there's a coupon code if you want to buy some of the products. He did end up shipping me some. I've been using them nearly every day in my oatmeal. They taste like mushrooms mixed with vodka in a weird way. And I know that that's perhaps not the most appealing way to market his product, but like it works. It's good. I recommend it. I don't know. I've been eating it every day, and I'm eating healthy stuff, you know? So anyway, it doesn't taste like an ice cream sundae, but it's a nice addition to, like, Kendra's just been putting it under her tongue periodically throughout the day, and she's still alive and super healthy. So anyway, thanks for being here. I adore you. I appreciate you. I respect you. I admire you. I'm glad you're here, taking up space, breathing, looking at trees and nature and such. You're wonderful, and I will talk to you soon. Got a couple really solid episodes coming up that I'm excited to share too. If you don't know me, you can find me on Instagram, on the internet at Long Distance Love Bombs. Got a book, an email list, courses, all the things. Much love, and I'll talk to you soon.